Hey everybody, this is Pastor Phil here. Let me ask you a question. How cold is too cold for golf? On today's show, we'll talk about how to winterize your golf game. Stay tuned.
You're listening to Life Under Par, the only devotional podcast dedicated to the Christian golfer and the pursuit of spiritual growth in Christ. It doesn't matter if you're a duffer, a hacker, a weekend warrior, or even a golf pro. This podcast is for you. So let's get started. For Life Under Par, here's your host, Pastor Phil Ayers.
Welcome. My name is Phil Ayers. I'm the host of Life Under Par. What is Life Under Par, you ask? Well, it's a podcast. A podcast that's about golf. We should call it the Parcast. You know, because it's a podcast about golf, the Parcast. We should do that. Except that would be dumb. So we're not going to do that. It's a podcast about golf and about growing spiritually in Christ. And on the show with us today is my good friend Kenny Green, who's joining us from Michigan. And we'll get to that in a moment. But before we do, let me tell you about Audible.com. I love Audible.com. It's installed on my iPhone. I listen to my favorite books. It's so easy, and there's so many books to choose from. More than 100,000 books. I don't have 100,000 on my iPhone, but I've got a bunch. I've got books on golf. I've got some of my favorite titles, like I've got that new biography about Steve Jobs. That was really, really fascinating and interesting. I've got the Bible on my iPhone there through Amazon.com. So if you want to check it out, you can get a 30-day trial for free. And you can even download an audiobook of your choice for free, just for trying it out, courtesy of Life Under Par. Here's how you do it. Go to audibletrial.com/life under par. That's audibletrial.com/life under par. We'll put some links in the show notes on the website, lifeunderpar.com. Listen, you'll be glad you did. And you know what? If you don't like it, you can cancel before 30 days. And hey, no harm, no foul. Well, this podcast is about spiritual growth. And I'd like to share some scriptures with you that you probably thought were the lyrics to a song. Depending on your age and what generation you're a part of, check out this song for 1 second and see if you recognize this.
It's a season, turn, 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 and a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh.
All right, so that is a song by a band called The Byrds. It's a song, I think, from the late 60s called Turn, Turn, Turn. And depending on, how old you are, you probably thought that they wrote that song, but really they just ripped that off from the Bible. I would like to read that passage to you. It's in the book of Ecclesiastes, and this is written by a guy named Solomon. It says, "There's a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace." Now, you're probably thinking, what in the world does this have to do with golf by any stretch? Well, here's what I think. There's a time when it comes to golf as well. There's a time to play golf when the sun is shining bright on your face. And there's a time when it gets cooler to bundle up. There's a time, even unfortunately, to pack away your sticks in the garage and dream of those first rounds that you'll play in the spring when the snow melts. And if you're hardcore, though, you'll play longer than most. So on today's show, I want to talk to you about how to winterize your golf game. We'll hear about all of that from my good friend Kenny Green after a short break.
Do you have a unique golf product that you'd like to have reviewed on the podcast? If so, send an email to lifeunderpar@gmail.com and tell us about your product. If it fits into our programming, we'll review it for free on the show. And thanks for listening.
Okay, now we're joined in the studio. Well, not really in the studio. We're remote. My good friend Kenny Green is joining us on Life Under Par. Ken, how are you?
I'm good, Pastor Phil. How are you today?
I'm good. I got to tell everybody, because I'm hoping that you'll be willing to be on the show, a few times. You are literally the friend that I have known the longest in my whole life.
Ditto.
Yeah. No, is that true for you too?
I think so, yeah.
That you still keep in touch with?
That I still have contact with, yep.
Wow, that's amazing. I was going to tell everybody how we met, because it's a good story. If you remember, I was 12. You must have been, 14?
14, yep.
Do you remember the first time we met?
Pond hockey.
That's right. I used to live in Michigan. Ken is from Michigan. That's where he's at now.
Right.
And that's, of course, what we're going to talk about on the show eventually. We're going to talk about playing golf in the wintertime. But we were playing pond hockey. I got dragged there by my cousin. I was only 12 years old, and they threw me in the goalie slot.
For kids that can't skate, that's where they put them.
That's true. I don't even think I was wearing skates. I'm pretty sure I was wearing moon boots.
Moon boots, right on.
I remember. And so this is like 82, maybe, something like that. So they put me in there. And no pads.
Right.
Maybe I had a baseball mitt and a plastic hockey stick, maybe. I don't know. But I remember you charging down the ice. I'd never seen you before. You had a bandana on like Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
Slap shot. And I blocked it, but I also broke my shin at the same time. So, do you remember that?
I remember that day well. I remember that the ice was not quite frozen all the way around the edge of the pond. So, like, it was late winter, early spring, and there was a ring of live water around the ice. So the ice was thick enough to skate on, but anytime we lost a puck, it went over the edge of the ice sheet and fell into the pond. So I think we went through about a dozen pucks that day, and that's probably the only thing that allowed you to live beyond that afternoon.
Very safe. Nowadays, you'd be out there skating with helmets and all kinds of things. Your parents would never let you do
my
them.
kids don't even own skates.
It's too dangerous.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, speaking of winter, we want to talk about winterizing your golf game. Now, I'm down here in Florida. I'm in Orlando, so I get to play golf all year round. But for the vast majority of people in the United States, and I would say a fair amount of our listeners, they gotta pack the clubs up in the fall. When's about the last time you really get to play golf up there in Michigan, Ken?
Typically around Thanksgiving time is about it. I played last year in December, but only because we had some unseasonably warm weather. And on that day, it was 38.
Oh,
now, for those of you that are
goodness.
out there, keep in mind that for Phil, about 50 degrees is his cutoff point.
50 degrees
For me,
exactly.
Yeah, today it's mid-October, and I played yesterday. It was about 53. So I'm still going strong for a few more weeks.
Well, if you can play golf when it's 38 degrees, my hat's off to you. And I guess I know a lot of people probably do that. So that's the key. I mean, I'm going to consider you up there in Michigan an expert in winter golf. What are the things you do to quote unquote winterize your golf game? How do you keep it going over the winter? How do you not go crazy, because you can't play golf up there? Or when you do play, what do you do?
Well, I'll be honest, you have to have a pretty strong ability to stomach some denial, because as the leaves start to change and the golf courses quit mowing the fairways and the greens anymore just because the grass isn't growing, you start to realize that it's going to end pretty soon. And you start to grasp for days when it's 41 degrees and it's not freezing rain and you can get in those last couple of shots. Very rarely are you playing 18 holes, and a lot of times there isn't even a cart, so you're walking if you don't normally do that.
So basically, this is extreme sports at its. I mean, you know, Do they keep the flags on the greens?
A lot of courses, I mean, it's a business. So if you think about a business that's going to shut down for 5 or 6 months, they're trying to wring every last little crazy off the couch to get them out there to hit a couple balls around. So they'll leave the flags in until after the first snowfall or two.
Wow.
You know, unless it's a course that really has a strong tourist business during the season where they can really draw high greens fees. If it's a local muni or it's just a private enterprise, they're going to have those flags out there late into the fall.
Just to squeeze any dollar out that they can.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's not uncommon to show up for a 10 a.m. tee time and not get out until 11:30 because of frost.
That scares me to death. Of course, I grew up in Michigan, and that's where I got to know Ken. But I didn't play golf when I lived in Michigan. That's what's so strange is that I didn't start playing till I already lived in Orlando for 8 years. So I'm kind of late to this. So if you're going to play out there, what's the best way to do it? What are some tips that you would have as far as playing in the cold weather?
Most obvious, you got to wear layers. So yesterday I went out. I had t-shirt, long sleeve, a fleece, and an overshirt just in case. As it starts to get colder, you're talking about, in addition to your golf glove, maybe some lightweight all-weather gloves, or even some fleece over gloves to wear between shots. I mean, I keep my golfing hand in my pocket, and then in between shots, I'm steering the cart with my fleeced glove. Strip it off and hit and run.
You have some of those mittens where the front comes off of them or whatever?
Yeah, you fold the flap back, shoot your fingers out.
That's right. I like some of those hand warmers. Do you take those out there? Those pocket hand warmers you get at the outdoor store? The
squeeze and snap, so they start warming up. I usually keep one of those in one pocket if it's really cold. But the biggest thing that really prohibits you from playing is water. If it's raining out, even though it might be 45 degrees, if it's raining, it's just going to be way too cold to be any fun.
Cold and wet. So layers are good. Obviously, that makes some sense. What about the equipment? Do you make any equipment changes, or do you just kind of play what you have? You have to do anything different with your clubs?
I don't really. I still play the same stuff in my bag, but I do usually go to a softer ball. Sometimes I'll go to a junior ball or a ladies ball, although I don't play pink. I might play something with a pink ribbon on it. Just because, it's like hitting rocks if you're trying to play some of the harder balls in the cold like that. The other thing that's probably the most important is good waterproof shoes. If your shoes are worn out and they're starting to drain some water in, you will not last.
Now, you don't play in this. You're not talking about playing in the snow. If there's snow on the ground, you're not playing. Am I correct?
That's where I draw the line. Although I have friends that will get out there and play with a tennis ball.
Holy smokes.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have to get them on the show. So layers, that was the key. Gloves, softer ball. What other kind of things keep you sane over the winter golf season up north?
The other thing about that play is I don't get too hung up on my score because the conditions are just not going to allow you to score like you do during the summer seasons. And I'm just going out to whack it around and keep my sanity. If I'm trying to go out and shoot my handicap, I'm in for a bad day, and you got to know that going out there.
So winter golf is just about sort of enjoying golf, but you can't take it too seriously because there's all kinds of different factors at play. I'm sure that the course has got to be in. Well, of course, the grass is not growing in the wintertime.
No, everything's dormant.
Everything's just kind of dormant, yeah.
Last year when I went out in December, I decided that the courses hadn't been cut since before Halloween.
Wow.
So real slow greens and just generally scrubby and it's not pretty. It's an addiction. I mean, that's all. That's the only way I can explain it.
Here's my suggestion, and this we'll talk about this in a second because I think one of the things you should do is just save up some money and then fly down to where you can play during the year. One thing that Ken and I do, and we'll have to go into this in some podcast, because we're actually golf rivals. We have a contest each year. I usually go up to Michigan, usually sometime around September. We play for the weekend. Ken flies down here sometime in February, March, and we play for the weekend. Winterizing your golf game, I mean, you can play a little bit, but the best thing to do is you're not playing, save up some money, fly down to a place like Orlando or somewhere in Florida where you can play.
Right, and typically that time of year, it's off-season as well. I mean, you can speak to the conditions down there, but during the winter months, even snowbirds like us, the rates are still pretty good. And if you're planning on spending a couple $100 a month during the summer, those 4 or 5 months where you're on hiatus or hibernating, put that aside and then, apply it to a weekend golf trip.
I agree. Well, the thing is, too, golf is actually cheaper down here than it is up north. So you can get down here. Now, technically, the winter is our golf season. Maybe not December, January, but February starts to be real golf season here for Florida because it's not hot yet. But it's still cheaper, though. So I say if you regularly spend, say $40, $50 a week playing golf up in Michigan, you can't play in the winter, take that money, set it aside. Month and a half or so, you'll have enough to fly down here and play at least 4 or 5 rounds over the weekend. I think it's totally worth it.
Absolutely.
When are you coming down?
It's probably going to be end of February. I think my wife has a trip planned early February, and because it's a boys' trip, we got to balance family life, and so we end up taking separate vacations over the winter.
Right. Well, we'll have a good rivalry set up. We play a lot of match play. How many holes did we play last time you came down here? We figured that out. It was a lot.
Like 108.
Yeah, over the weekend we played twice.
3 days.
Right. It was a good. I don't remember who won.
It was a split. I usually win the first couple of rounds because of muscle memory, but then my old habits start to come back.
It's at least 2 rounds before you start realizing, hey, I'm not this good. What's the problem?
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's been good having you.
Another thing that I might add to the listeners is if you're going to be stuck up here and it's snowing outside, I like to read a couple of good golf books. I read some books by Mark Frost. The Match is a great book that I'd recommend, and maybe you talk about those on a future episode, Phil, but there's some great historical golf books that are out there. And I also like to read golf magazines, even though I know that it's going to be weeks or months until I get back out.
Right.
I just like to look at some of those tips and just think about my swing and kind of process what that looks like when it does finally warm up.
That's probably the most economical way to feed your golf addiction over the winter.
Yeah, and then having a putting cup and the putter leaning up against the wall doesn't hurt either.
and a significant dose of Golf Channel.
Right.
Well, that's good. Well, it's been great having you on the show, Ken. We'll have to talk to you very, very soon. Make sure you start making some plans to get down here as soon as you can. All right, well, for Life Under Par, this has been Pastor Phil saying don't forget to rake those bunkers, fill those divots, keep pace of play, don't forget to wear gloves. Have a great week, everybody. We'll see you next time.